Okay, well, you don't have my presentation? You know what? No sweat. We can just roll with it. I can just talk if that's, yeah, and I can share the presentation later. No worries. So thank you very much for inviting me here to your territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation. Um, the land has always been and continues to be cared for by the Algonquin people, and it means a lot to share this time with you. My name is Noelle McLean. I'm the founder of Rise Results Business Services. We're located in beautiful Unama'ki, otherwise known as Cape Breton Island. Anybody here been to Cape Breton, from Cape Breton? Yay! Awesome. It's truly stunning, and it is one of the 7 traditional districts of Mi'kma'ki. Our team at Rise Results provides services in various ways to help businesses and communities and Indigenous organizations move forward. We provide research, strategy development, marketing, and event management. So we have a core team of 8, and we have 4 amazing Mi'kmaq advisors that are so kind to guide us in our work with Indigenous communities and in Indigenous-led projects. We really value the relationships we've formed with Indigenous communities we work with, and in every project we undertake, we are committed to fostering partnerships that are built on trust and respect and understanding. We've been working with the Indigenous Connectivity Institute since early 2025. We were engaged to collaborate on a strategic plan to help guide growth, strengthen impact, and help to prepare ICI to become an independent, self-sustaining organization. We fully share the determination for Indigenous people to have full control over their digital futures. We began our work by conducting stakeholder and rights holder engagements to ensure the strategy is developed with to reflect community needs and community aspirations. Surveys helped us to gather a wide range of perspectives, and we also reached out to 14 organizations who work with ICI, including funders, training partners, collaborators in policy and in research. The presentation, or lack thereof, my chat, I sent it to Mark, and he said he was going to give it to. So we can trace it back to the. It's all good. It's all good. I can see, I'm sure Mark has everyone's emails. You can send it out, but the bulk of the information is going to come through the chat, through our chats. Yeah, so we're going to walk through the insights we heard from communities, youth, and leadership teams, lessons learned from other organizations, and the draft priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. At the end, I'm going to put everybody to work. I have some questions to ask, and your voices really matter in helping to shape the final strategic plan for the Indigenous Connectivity Institute. Between May and July, we engaged with the ICI Advisory Committee and leadership team. We did shared discussions and we received written input. I'm going to share the key findings with you. So the first was that there was a strong agreement on the need to build independence and sustainability for ICI. This includes developing a fully Indigenous-led nonprofit, strong representative governance, and securing realistic, long-term, and stable resources. Both groups emphasize strengthening organizational systems and raising visibility. This would include improving internal processes and building a stronger communication strategy to expand awareness of ICI and its work. The need to reach groups that haven't been involved yet as much was also raised. This would include engagement with more elders, remote youth, such as those in Inuit and Northern communities, French-speaking communities, offers urban Indigenous members, and those in the U.S., including Indigenous communities to tribal colleges to workforce development offices. The next finding was the need to build skilled workforce and youth pathways. One of the things that I was so inspired by what Candace was saying is that from that grassroots perspective, really starting with the youth and building those skills. So anyway, sorry, I'm a girl fan now. So the next generation can move into technical policy and leadership roles with the skills and confidence to shape their digital futures. Both groups also highlighted the need to expand partnerships, funding, and also mentioned partners should share the same values and ensure Indigenous leadership in decision-making and staying in control. The last key finding from this group was the importance of culturally grounded training, leadership, and policy advocacy. We're going to move on now to what we heard from youth, and unfortunately, we didn't hear enough from youth. We do need more youth feedback and more youth voices, so we will be working to gather that, but this is what we were able to understand. Youth told us they want real pathways into the sector with stronger voices through a youth circle, advisor roles, and a youth advisory committee. They see themselves as the future workforce and ask for culturally grounded in-community training, mentorship, and leadership opportunities. The advisory committee and leadership team reinforced these points and added more, suggesting digital guardianship roles, more youth entrepreneurship, and mentorship in early outreach in schools. They also noted the need to reach more remote youths through a youth coordinator, social media, and potentially an alumni network. In July of 2025, we did a community survey. Key findings from community members showed that the biggest barriers remain cost, speed, and infrastructure. Over half of respondents said service is unaffordable. Most respondents saw the benefits of Indigenous communities building and managing their own networks. Benefits would include more control over digital futures, stronger sovereignty and self-determination, and more opportunities for jobs and education. They also noted that to make that possible, communities need more training, technical support, and long-term capacity. We also heard about barriers to participating in ICI programs, including travel, caregiving responsibilities, and limited information. There's a call for more outreach to youth and elders, off-reserve members, Inuit and Northern regions, and for training and connections with Indigenous professionals in tech. What does success look like by 2030? That was another question that we asked. So many respondents noted that affordable and reliable internet as a basic utility with community-owned networks and digital sovereignty would be a reflection of success. Priorities noted for the next 5 years included Indigenous-owned networks and infrastructure, digital sovereignty, policy and funding shifts for Indigenous control, youth leadership and training, and values-based partnerships. Comparatively, we conducted research in best practices. We reviewed the First Mile Connectivity Consortium, the Native Public Media, and First Nations Technology Council. I apologize. I did practice all of my pronunciations. The Kukina Network, Tribal Digital Village Network. Our takeaways included strong Indigenous governance being central. When decisions are guided by Indigenous leadership and values, organizations gain trust and stability. Policy advocacy works best when it grows from community practice, starting with local experience and building outward. Diverse funding strengthens stability. Combining grants, partnerships, and earned income makes organizations less dependent on any single source. Growth always takes time and trusted relationships. And workforce and infrastructure often grow together. Networks last longer when training and local jobs are developed alongside technology. Based on the feedback from the advisory committee and leadership team, community survey, and best practice research, we recommended 6 draft strategic priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm going to go over those with you. The first being governance and independence. Building ICI is a fully Indigenous-led organization with strong governance, its own board, and resources to stand on its own. Priority 2, strengthening community connectivity. Support community-led networks, capacity sharing, and digital sovereignty so communities can shape their own digital futures. The third being advancing policy and advocacy. Indigenous voices are needed to shape the decisions on spectrum, funding, digital equity, inclusion, and affordability. Fair consultation processes and accountability from outside entities working in community must be managed. Number 4, investing in youth, Indigenous youth, and the workforce. preparing youth for technical and policy roles, and investment in clear pathways for training, mentorship, and leadership. Number 5, sustainable funding and partnerships. So by securing sustainable funding and partnerships paired with long-term values-based relationships, ICI can help ensure Indigenous leadership and control. And the final one was communication and awareness. Expanding ICI's story and raising visibility across Canada and the US will help people understand why Indigenous-led connectivity matters. I want to thank you all again for inviting us to present on this important work. We really appreciate being here and sharing this time with you. But now is where I'd like to start asking a few questions so that you can help share your voices. And I did have a volunteer to take some notes. Did he run away? Also, in our presentation, when it gets shared out, there is a QR code. So if you are shy today, but you do want to share your voice, you can use that QR code to go to a feedback form that will help further inform the strategy. And here he comes. Awesome. Okay, so I'll start with the questions and you could start thinking of some answers. Of those 6 priorities I just shared, which are the most needed in your community right now?
Do you have those on presentation? If we're going to put them up too.
I don't. No, the presentation part is all done now. It's all good, but I'm sure you can email it to participants if that's okay. Yeah. So does anybody have any, I can just go over the 6 things again really quickly, just the topics. So governance and independence, strengthening community connectivity, advancing policy and advocacy, investing in youth in the workforce, sustainable funding and partnerships, and communication and awareness. Are any of those stand out to you as, yes, this is what we need in our community?
Say community, Indigenous community.
Indigenous communities, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. What did we miss in those 6 priorities? Oh, come on, we didn't nail it. We must have missed something.
You nailed it.
Awesome. I don't have the questions even on the presentation. Yeah, the questions are just.
But we could put the areas up.
Yeah. If
Right.
you want to do that, I can put those. Yeah.
I'll bring the question at the mic to anyone who has a question. You get to hold a really cool microphone.
Okay, so if you think of anything that we might have missed, please use that QR code that will be up soon and share with us. Yeah. How can ICI keep their partnerships, funding, and policy work guided by Indigenous leadership and priorities? Yes.
Missing, border, like.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we're missing including our American cousins on the tribal tribal communities. So I don't know if that was included in your work, but we represent both sides of the border. So maybe that's something that's been missing.
Using the relationships and
Providing service to tribal communities on the American side.
okay. Thank you. Hey,
Screen. We're trying to get it up on screen.
anything else that we missed? Okay. And then it was, how can ICI keep partnerships, funding, and policy work guided by Indigenous leadership and priorities? I'm sorry, and it's the end of a 3-day conference, and I'm asking you hard questions.
And right after lunch.
Yeah. How can ICI keep partnerships, funding, and policy work guided by Indigenous leadership and Indigenous priorities?
By traveling to community and continuing to go to community and holding open, whether we call them town halls or venues for listening and dialogue in community. And encouraging leadership, not just traditional governance from within the community to participate. So multi-generational participation from within community, including elders, knowledge keepers, knowledge holders, youths from 18 to 35, more youth.
You could have just done the whole thing. That's awesome. Thank you. All right, just a couple more, and then I'll go away.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Kind of like what was presentation where we heard from housing and there's potential synergies. Not limit ourselves in terms of our network just in this space, but whenever we have opportunity, talk in other spaces, because what we do affects other spaces. So when you have opportunity, be in those rooms, those conferences. Because you never know what kind of partnership might come of that.
I don't write very fast, I'm sorry. But this is awesome information. Okay, I'm going to try to get my presentation going. I'm taking tomorrow off, okay? Just narrative insights, strategic priorities. Okay, so these were the strategic priorities that we okay, as ICI works towards independence, what should strong governance look like? I guess I don't need 2 microphones, so this is going to my head.
First off, as much as possible, Indigenous, led by Indigenous, so Indigenous representation across the board. ICI is very much open to allyship, and we will never say no to allies who support our cause. But in terms of, I guess, representation within the organization, as much Indigenous as possible. I don't mean to offend with that comment, but I think it's important to say.
I would suggest you have a strong governance structure. That means like, what kind of oversight do you have? Who's the executive? Who's part of the council? What kind of power do they have over the executive? And how do they take that into account? And a lot of that could be found in existing structures in organizations and how they make their governance structure. But it would have to be co-designed, I feel, by the youth to draft these priorities so it fits them and their preferences, I suppose.
Thank you. Couldn't figure out who was talking. Thank you so much. Okay, last question. Oh, sorry.
Just coming from a region who deals with connectivity with a mandate to do so, it's important, I think, for ICI to present themselves in a way where, you know, like, for example, you're coming to Quebec, we know well what you're coming as, what your planning to do and all that. So the mandate has to be clear on, do you have a mandate? If not, then explain your purpose well, your values and stuff that links to existing, leaders and stuff like that. So you don't come as a surprise to people, and that's when surprises often turn to closed doors, right? So keep in mind that you have strong existing, like in BC, they have the First Nations Technology Council, which is, amazing. And that exists across Canada, in different forms. So it's a recommendation on ICI moving forward in terms of, not positioning themselves, but just being clear so that it's clear coming into the regions.
That actually you started answering the last question here, is what methods of communication and outreach are most meaningful in communities? And having a strong mandate is a foundation in order to communicate effectively. Anything else to add to that question?
Yeah, to your point, I completely agree, because the last thing you want to do is build walls in an approach right away because there's misunderstanding. So to be open and clear, but I guess our position needs to be, we're here to enhance and support existing and not disrupt.
So like existing policies, existing organizations that are moving this work forward.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to be seen as disruptive,
Okay.
Have
Yep.
negative connotations with our name because we're doing harmful things that we are here to support.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah, we're not intervening where we're not wanted.
Well, and Frank, it speaks to what you say speaks to something I've often thought about is we don't want to be doing any work that someone else is doing, right? We need to find our space and do as good of a job as we possibly can within that space so that it supports everyone else who's doing similar work. We all have the same goal, and there's no shortage of work that needs to be done.
I think on the communication piece itself is having a multilingual capacity, if you want to call it that, and being able to have French speakers as well as I don't know how many different languages. We can't have one person or 500 people speaking 500 languages. But we should have ideally some First Nation, Inuit, or Métis folks who are fluent in a native tongue, so to speak. And we need to continue to ensure that we have gender representation and gender equity within our organization.
I think with this coming from the FMCC world, this group is completely different in my view, because you have an outreach that's way beyond what we do, and your outreach is impressive, and I think you have that strength here. Not only do you have a partner, a funding partner to do the work that you're doing, the FMCC is not in the market to get funding because we got to remain neutral. Because when we go to CRTC, we don't want Bell to say that you're supported by this, by that. We're neutral. We're all volunteer based. So this is why we remain neutral. But this is the kind of thing we need to complement, the work we're doing, but other people that are doing. And this is so important. I think your outreach here is really key, I think, to reaching everybody that we need to do. So the scope here is really important.
Tim, that's actually really interesting because it's one of the things I'd like to talk about when we move into the town hall is how can we not necessarily work together, but work to complement each other because, the forces we're fighting against, this isn't televised, but, the telcos have a lot of lawyers and a lot of resources, and we're up against that in the CRTC and I said, so if we can reinforce each other's messages, I think it would go a long way.
I'm not sure if representative governance structure would fit into what we're talking about in terms of regions, where I'm just trying to wrap my mind around what Tim White Duck was saying about being neutral in terms of outreach. But I think it's good that it's representative of the aims and the objects of what we're attempting to do, and how that will look like in terms of carrying out our purpose and what our aim is. And I think, yeah, I would, in a sense, do agree with what's being discussed thus far in terms of also what Mr. White Duck is saying. I'm just trying to, how, say, big three organizations or conglomerates fit into all that when we talk about governance. In terms, perhaps partnering with them, with their infrastructure, if you will, in terms of connectivity. So I think maybe that's something that needs to be molded more, I guess, in terms of what we're trying to, or fashioning somewhat in terms of what we mean by governance and independence. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and your thoughtfulness in answering the questions. This is the QR code that I promised you. I am going to go away now. Thank you all so much for sharing this time with me, and I hope to see you again.